having something coming in at any given time, because what ends up happening with these deals that take months or years to close, on whether it's the acquisition side or the sales side, as soon as
What's up, everybody? Mason and Dan coming at you with another listener questions episode. This is, I think, the third time we've done this, and we'll be going through questions we've gotten from Facebook, Instagram, on our school community, and ideally picking ones that are on everyone's mind. So it's widely applicable. But Mason, how are things back in Colorado?
things are good. It's like a weird mix of very busy for me, but the market's a little bit wonky. It's end of October as we're recording this episode, which is always kind of moving into a very slow time of year with the holidays coming up. And it's a mix of everyone trying to get everything done before the end of the year and people thinking that the year is already over, which makes business both fun and challenging.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. I traditionally had sold a lot of infill lots at the end of the year to builders who wanted houses coming online for spring and summer, but that's much slower this year. So what we're selling are still just acreage tracts to people who want to put their home there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what November and December are like.
Oh yeah. No, and I feel like with acquisitions, this is the time that's best for us, of the end of the year. Of a lot of people do stop business in the holidays, and we do not. So we're staying very, very busy, but I think it'll be fun to kind of dive into what people who are listening to the show are asking and what we're seeing. And I think one thing I'll say, Dan, is I'm seeing just like a lot less activity in general from a lot of the people that had been very active in the land flipping or land investing space maybe a year or two ago. And I don't see them as much anymore. So, I think hopefully these questions will answer, different thoughts that people are having that are looking to get started into this space going into 2026.
Yeah, agreed. It's normalized. It's a normal business again. It's not the frenzy that we had, which is a good thing. So I'm excited. So I like the first one we have on the list here. It was a question about when we choose to dispose of a lead that isn't immediately ready, or maybe they want too high of a price, versus keeping it in long-term follow-up. And I actually just had a conversation with one of my acquisition guys about this. But how do you think about that, Mason?
You have to back up a little bit and determine what type of lead it is. Is it actually like a qualified lead, meaning that they are maybe on the fence about selling, but not ready to, the timing of it's off, and it's a property that you would actually want, if the price is correct. I think whenever you start sending so much mail and having so many phone calls, you end up getting these leads in your system that, like, even if they would sell it to you at 10 cents on the dollar, you wouldn't actually want the property. So make sure you have some sort of qualification metric of, okay, this, seller lead is in an area that's desirable, but they, are not quite ready to sell. And for those people, I keep them in forever. Put them on a drip campaign of, text messages every 30 to 60 days, and then a follow-up call in 6 months or something like that. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's pretty much every qualified lead is going to stay on a drip campaign until they tell us to take them off.
Yeah, we have a really similar sort of heuristic where I tell my guys it's the quality of the land itself. So assuming the seller isn't hostile and they're not obscene with their pricing. We run into people that want twice, 3 times market. Okay, we'll dispose of those people. But let's say, for example, we had one in North Carolina. It was like 110 acres. He wanted right around market, essentially, is what it came out to. But there are very few parcels like his, no wetlands, no flood zone, very even topography, highway running through it. And so I told my acquisition guy, absolutely do not discard that. This is the actual seller of a great piece of land. You never know what the future holds, both in his motivation to sell and what that land could be worth. There are so many lots that are in areas we've done business a long time. We got the lead, couldn't buy it. 3 years later, prices have gone up. We can pay their price. So for nice, expensive, unique properties where we have, an easy one owner, right? It's not some airship mess. Even if they want market, we'll keep those in our CRM.
I think to expand a little bit on, what I was talking about too is just like why it's so important to have language that you create internally around the type of leads and type of sellers that you have where, for instance, for us, we have uh, warm and cool leads. A warm lead means they contacted us, whether that was, through organic, on our website or something like that, or a response to a mailer, as versus a cool lead, which means that we cold called them and they expressed maybe, some potential interest. And the reason we create those differences is they had to take action, to reach out to us. So it means that they're going to be most likely more open to selling sooner. And then we have desirable and undesirable lots. Desirable means it's in a market we're familiar with. We know what we're going to be able to do with it if we're able to acquire it. And then undesirable, those are the ones that end up, after a certain period of time, we toss them because it's not worth the bandwidth for us. So, but sweet. Anything else you want to add to this question?
No, I think that's a good place to leave it because we can't give a good specific rule. It's going to vary from business to business, and there's so many different markets we're in, and so many different profit margins that people are okay with depending on where they're at. So I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah. Which I feel like, we can jump ahead to question 3 here because it's kind of related to this one, which is what's your system for knowing which sellers to call back and when? Dude, that's a blanket statement. All of them is the answer because we get leads all the time and call it a data issue. There's certain counties that I work in that, yesterday I had a conversation with someone who's like the family expert on their land holdings. And it turns out they sold off all the land a long time ago, but our data showed that it was land surface rights, but they just own mineral rights. And so I had a conversation with him and, it was a really pleasant conversation and they don't own any land or have any friends that own any land anymore. But anyone that you're talking to, anyone that calls you, call them back because that's going to potentially lead to a deal, whether it's their property or a friend's property or a neighbor's property or a family member's property or something like that. Like any conversation that you're having with a seller, you or a member of your team should be having because no offense to Dan and myself, if you're listening to this podcast, you are at a level where you need to be getting more reps. You need tens of thousands of reps talking to sellers. And the only way to do that is to call them back. And yeah, I mean, that to me is just the easiest blanket answer.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's well said. I don't really have anything to add there. Just an anecdote. We had a missed call to one of our inbound phone numbers from mailers. This was 2 months ago. Long story short, my acquisition manager called it back several times, finally gets the guy on the phone. He owns 68 acres in South Carolina. Fast forward to today, this was a long-term follow-up. I mean, it took a lot of follow-up. We have it under contract at 190 to buy. We have a buyer at 300. We're just waiting on a survey. So regardless of whether or not that transaction goes through, it's the real seller of 68 acres in South Carolina, and he didn't even leave a voicemail. It was just a missed call. So call everyone back, including your missed calls that don't have voicemails. Looking through this list, I like number 4 here. How do you structure seller financing sales, considering foreclosure risk and just to keep yourself protected is the moral of this one. Go ahead, Mason. If you want to take it, you can start.
I've been burnt once on a seller financing deal. And the biggest issue was I had to bring money to the table. So usually that's my metric. However, I have broken that metric whenever it's just like a really bad deal that we've held for a long time of just getting inventory moved. But it's a note and a deed of trust is how I structure all of my seller financing terms. I know you've been doing some different stuff with land contracts, which I'll leave that to you. But for me, it's on a lot of these lots, I think the best way to like secure it, beyond it being, the note being secured against the property is trying to underwrite in some capacity to make sure that the buyers of the lot are going to be able to afford the payment. So, I mean, you can do everything from a soft pull on their credit, which I don't do. I just ask them, what's your credit score? And provide your last two pay stubs. And that for me has, showed everything that I need to know of like, hey, they have, a decent job, like a decent employer, and I've never had an issue. But yeah, I think just that little bit of due diligence is really helpful. I also Google the people. The one promissory note that I had that went poorly, I did not Google them. And it turns out they were like a convicted sex offender, had left multiple states multiple times, and their track record was just, not necessarily ideal. So, yeah, that's kind of what I do. What about you, Dan?
So all good advice, but there's one metric in my mind that just trumps everything else, and that's if they're putting a huge down payment down. So I've flipped most of my lots for cash over the years. I've done, I don't know, 3 dozen term sales probably, and now doing more of that. And I have found that if someone puts 30+% down, they're going to do everything they can not to default. So I've done plenty of note sales where I didn't really verify anything other than them actually having those down payment funds, and I have had no issues. I've done a few lower down payment sales, and I'm doing that continually now, but those I am keeping on land contract or contract for deed where it doesn't transfer to them until they've paid it off. And then on the flip side, when they put a big down payment down, I'll do a note and deed of trust. It's mostly been Colorado. I'm now forgetting if that's the correct term for the Florida ones I've done, but I think it is. But same idea where title actually transfers and then they pay me monthly and I release the lien once paid off. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's just a matter of down payment above all else. Cause if someone puts, 45 grand as a down payment, which someone just did on one I sold on terms this summer, I'm just not that worried about whether they're gonna pay. And if they want to not pay and I foreclose and take back the property, then at that point, that works out. So that's how I think about it.
Oh yeah. One, it's also really nice whenever if you can look at the cost of foreclosure and calculate what that's going to cost, which depending on the state, it's going to be different. If you can at least secure that as a down payment, that way you're not going super in the negative if you have to pursue action. But everything, make sure to consult with an attorney or, each state operates very different with different lending laws. So just make sure you're operating within the bounds of the state. We can jump to number 5 here of how do you stay motivated when deals take months or years to close?
Yeah, this one is something I think about a lot because this is a reality of, well, really most things in life that are worth doing. But especially now, the time horizons have become longer. I'm doing a lot more larger deals or value add deals. And, like the 640 acres, I won't see any profit from that probably for a year and a half to 2 years, which is painful. But the upside is tremendous. And so I'll see a big payday down the road. So to answer the question more specifically, I think a big thing that I think about constantly is Hormozy always says this, but your ability to work at something without getting rewarded is for a long time is very closely correlated to your ability to achieve anything substantial. So I think about that a lot because this is a reality of the business. I think of all the delayed gratification too, just with the rental properties I have. I haven't really taken anything from any of those, but they're just stacking up both in terms of equity and just cash in the bank from monthly income. So I know that's not the most succinct or clear answer, but just keeping top of mind that all big businesses or big goals of any kind are this way, where there's a lot of delayed gratification, helps to keep me moving or going.
I think also just having something coming in at any given time, because what ends up happening with these deals that take months or years to close on, whether it's the acquisition side or the sales side, as soon as you start getting desperate of like the need for one deal to close, then everything else will be okay. Like that, it's a trap that you're never going to be able to get out of because it's always the next deal that like as soon as it closes. And then you keep acquiring deals that, are going to take much, much longer than you anticipate. So I think that if you can have something in your business or in your professional life that is giving you those quick wins, that can help you with the delayed gratification that building a real and legitimate and substantial business requires. Because, um, it's not easy to just sit around and be like, oh yeah, I get one paycheck a year, from this one particular deal or something like that. So I think building up the pipeline of having a lot of properties, that are small wins, constantly transacting, or a bunch of properties on notes or rental properties, or just having a decent paying job, I think can help, you know, help you stay motivated on those big ones. Cause those are just like, it's playing with house money, or it's like gravy on top, which makes it really, really attractive of like, oh shoot, whenever that closes, of like, that Franktown deal that I complained about is a note that's just paying me like $2,000 a month now. And one day it's going to be a $300,000 balloon payment, and I'll have forgotten about it by then. I probably won't, it's a decent amount of money to come in. But whenever that happens, I'm going to be like, dude, heck yeah, that's amazing. That was a deal that I needed to close, and then it delayed for years. And here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. I that $45,000 down payment one was similar, where the note's like 145, and he's paying me interest only on that every month. You took a more I took a more philosophical approach. You took a more tactical approach, so that worked out well. But yes, on a more practical level, if you're brand new and you quit your job and you don't have any income, you've got to focus on quick wins along with the big ones. And so I think doing those in conjunction with each other is really important. And so that actually is a great pivot to number 7. How do you know when it's time to move from small deals to larger ones? I think this is more a matter of competence, right? When you're new and you don't have a lot of experience, both, in land or in any given market, I'd rather start with a smaller degree of risk when I don't know what I'm doing, right? Because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes even when you're experienced, but you're going to make more mistakes when you don't know what you're doing. So I'd say once you've gotten a good amount of iteration in with a given type of land in a given market, dozens and dozens of deals, then it makes sense to start to scale the price point, because you have a higher degree of confidence in what you're doing, and mishap won't, we're being really general, but won't be as much of, or it won't take you out of business, ideally.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people would disagree with what you're saying of like, 10x is easier than 1x, 2x, or, whatever. But the problem is like, in order to actually accomplish something, like, why would you not jump in, to the shallow end a little bit and take on a deal where it's buy for 10, sell for 20, and it's like a pretty simple transaction for you to understand it. Because whether you're just extremely well capitalized, or, whatever the circumstances that may allow you to do the larger deals first, it's, I think, being a bad steward of the deal, of your capital, and of any investor capital if you have no experience kind of jumping in. So it doesn't mean that you need to do 1,000 little deals, but I feel like, for me, kind of a lot of the transitions that I'm, going through kind of in my business right now, of what I need to do is I need to delegate and automate the small deals, because it's like, I feel like I either have the bandwidth to focus on small deals or the bandwidth to focus on big deals. And, it's like kind of different. But I don't know. I don't know if there's ever going to be a place in my life where if I could passively, like, or automatically make, 500 or $1,000 on a deal, I wouldn't do it if it's like a true passive, thing. So, I don't know. I think if you have enough cash in the bank to, view a big deal as the same risk as a small deal, I think that might be like a tangible metric that you can do. But it's never going to be fully comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, okay, where you're at financially, you have to look at your own situation, but I don't think most people getting into land are in a situation where they have hundreds of thousands of dollars just sitting around, and if they make a mistake on a bigger deal, that, oh, okay, I just eat that. I think that's the outlier or exception as opposed to the rule. But even so, because I actually know someone who was in that position, who got into land, and he messed up on his first deal, and I think he ended up just losing like a little bit of money, because it was like a buy for 30, and he thought he was going to sell it for 60, and long story short, ended up selling it right around 30, because of some building code in that area that made that lot really difficult to build on. I think we've run into that, haven't we, Mason? So all that to say, what big or small means depends on your financial situation. And I think really when you're starting, small should just be within your risk tolerance, where if that money is gone and or tied up for a long time, you can survive. I think that's really the important metric. If you're brand new, or if you have no money and you're finding a way to raise money to do multi seven figure deals where these would make you bankrupt and disgrace you as far as your reputation if they fail, that's stupid. You shouldn't start with that. And the starting with 10x or saying 10x is easier than 1x is just stupid. And it's great for selling books and courses, but it's not great for reality.
Yeah, agreed. When I feel like this leads into our next question, which is, what are signs that a cheap piece of land actually isn't a deal? One thing I've noticed, picking up my first cheap piece of land deal in a while this year that's still sitting, it's just inventory. If there is a tremendous amount of inventory, regardless of the price that you're getting that property at, it might not be a great deal. There are certain markets where it's like, okay, well, all the inventory is listed at 17,000. I can get this piece of land for 5 and sell it for 11, and that's a great deal by most metrics if you're selling it yourself and you don't have a title company and a realtor involved. But even if you're making a 30-40% margin on your money, that's fantastic. But if there are 200 similar properties on the market, that's usually a telltale sign to me that the cheap piece of land is not a deal. The other stuff is it's a non-conforming lot, like everything else is shaped entirely different. Or this one has a flood zone or wetlands where none of the other buildable lots actually have it. You can't always make your money when you buy, is something to think about here, even if you get it nearly for free.
Yeah, I like this question because this is the difficulty where I think a lot of people coming from more efficient markets like apartments or stocks, for example, they think that all other asset classes are just as efficient and there aren't as many mispricings. Where in land, there are a lot of mispricings. There are a lot of blatant opportunities to those who know the asset class. But they're not all that way. And so this is the difficult thing. This question actually came from Instagram when I posted about the 640 acres and it appraised at 760 and we bought it at 410. But someone commented, well, why hasn't it sold if it is actually such a good deal? And that is the tricky question because I spend time every week looking at large listings on the MLS, trying to find more of these. And most of them are shit. There's something wrong with them, whether it's the wetlands or flood zone or horrible topography or like that Pueblo West lot that keeps getting sent around. That's just a lemon that the guy's just wasting his time. And so it really comes back to what we talk about so often, and that is knowing your specific market. And I was confident in buying that deal, that 640 acres, because I know that market. I was selling land down the street. I know other people that have sold land in the area. I know the things to watch out for. And it checked all the boxes. So that was just a result of market inefficiency, incompetent realtor, really lazy realtor, some fear in the market, a number of different things. Whereas many of these properties listed cheaply are a result of problems with that property. And so the only way to really know is to know your market better than anywhere else.
Yeah, agreed with that. And it's something that I feel like we all experience with different mailing campaigns all the time. I remember I did maybe my second or third mailing campaign I ever did. It was a blind offer. I offered like $300 or $400 on all these lots in South Fork, Colorado, where you needed 4 or 5 contiguous lots to be able to actually do any construction. And I got a tremendous response because people were like, oh, you're the first person that ever priced these appropriately, because it's worthless to buy this land if you don't own 4 contiguous lots. And, I went through all the leads and I tried to like play puzzle piece matchmaker to see, if I could make it happen. But the property tax was, like $500 a lot per year. And I think that, that's another factor too, is like, some people are getting stuck with these property tax bills and HOA bills and stuff like that. And they're like, just take it. I don't care. But then that's going to end up being your burden if you're the one that's going to be holding that property for a really long period of time. So the people that call you back, typically, there's a reason that they're the ones calling you back. It's because they're stuck with a piece of land they don't know what to do with.
Many times. Yeah. Yeah. But again, I want to highlight, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to this whole conversation, but land is an inefficient asset class, and you can buy ridiculous discounts both on the MLS and direct from sellers, which we've been doing for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, let's see. There's another good one here that's a little less fun to talk about, but is important, which is asking us how we track all of our lists and who we've mailed and when we've mailed them and how many times. And I'll be honest, I just have this awful spreadsheet that I primarily use that has, everything from the specifics of the list to the geographical area to what I use to pull the data. Was it data tree or prop stream or deal machine? To the type of mail piece sent to when we last cold called it. And then separately, I use ClickUp to track the areas we hit over and over and over again. And I just have it on an iteration where, okay, here's, X area, and then X area is split into these 4 polygons I have drawn on PropStream. And all right, I hit this polygon in this area, in July. Then I'm set to mail it again in November. I cold call. It's all tracked on there for the areas we hit over and over and over again. And then I also have the master spreadsheet. So it's not easy to do. And I've talked to many people about this, and I haven't found a single person that has this really simplified to a clean system, because when you're hitting the same areas over and over again and the same, but with cold calling, mail, and then different mail types, there's so many splits, right? And different things to track. It gets pretty difficult, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got kind of a similar spreadsheet as Dan, and then it's the same challenge of there's just so many different sources and software that you have to use where you can integrate it like okay, but there has not been like a solution that either of us have found that make it perfect. I think the only way to like truly do it would be build our own CRM that integrates directly with all of the different mailing services and softwares and everything like that we use, or have it all within that one ecosystem. But yeah, I think it's just a nitty gritty hand tracking is one of the potentially easiest ways for the non-tech savvy person to do it, of just try and keep track of the response rate. If you mail directly through Pebble, which we both use, that makes it a lot easier to see the success of individual campaigns. But when you're cold calling from a different place, and then sending additional mailers, like ballpoint mailing has been great for us. It just it gets messy quick, so do whatever you can, which is not the best answer, but
No, but I would much rather mail people too much than not enough, because the longer I'm doing this, the more people I'm meeting doing this at scale and having done it much longer than me, the ridiculous kind of rules I've had in my head about how often we can mail a specific list are just totally false. Like the amount of people that are not seeing your mail pieces on that list and the amount of mailers they're getting, especially in the hot areas, you could, if you had the budget, you could probably get additional ROI that's more, well, that's in the name, implied in the name, or the acronym ROI, by mailing every month if you had the budget, So
yeah, no, absolutely. But I will say, like, that is probably one of the biggest hangups in my business, that I think we are so scattered with the approach, because there's only so many properties we're targeting, like we're actually targeting, and we've hit them so many different times of, that's a project that I'm going to be working on in the coming weeks, of really just pulling every single landowner that owns a piece of property that we would want, with 1+ year of ownership, and just kind of keeping a centralized database of them, and start kind of integrating everything there. So that'll be kind of a painful project for me to do, but it's what's going to be best for the long-term results.
will that actually be you, Mason, or will somebody else in your household end up doing that?
No comment. Someone with the last name McDonald will be working it.
Oh, All right, I have a few more on here that I like. Um, what is oh, rural counties with few comps. How do you approach pricing in rural counties with few comps or comping? I think they meant because I'm not sending land offer letters, but it's the same thing. This is tricky, and a lot of times what I'm running into recently in some of these areas, there's a couple listings we have right now where there were comps at large acres levels, 100, 200 acres. And then there were comps on the infill side of these little point 0.5 or 1 acre lots that had been split off of big parcels on highways. And we got a couple, specifically, I'm thinking of 5 acre tracts, actually three in three different counties in South Carolina. And there were no good comps. And so between the local expert we had on our team and then extrapolating kind of a median between the price per acre on those huge tracts and then the price per acre on those small, very small tracts, we came up with what we think we could sell them for. And so far, so good. One of them went under contract immediately. One of them not under contract yet. We're getting a lot of interest. And the third one we haven't closed yet. And so that's been my best way of doing that. The only caveat I'll say to all this is there were still pieces of land that had sold. This wasn't somewhere 3 hours from a major city with no transactions happening, no houses selling, no land, no nothing. If you get too far, like we got a big piece of land in one of the most rural parts of all of North Carolina, subdividable, pretty good road frontage and topography, no wetlands or anything. But it just, man, there was so little sales volume. I'm like, all right, if we buy 200 acres and split these into 5 to 20 acre lots, it might take the next 10 years to sell all these. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think the easiest way, if the data is available, um, is you go on the assessor's website and you look at sales. And a lot of the assessor websites, even in the pretty rural counties, are going to have, and usually there's a 1 to 2 month lag time with the data actually being published, but you can go in, download that data into a CSV and then analyze it to, try and get, a price per acre. With a lot of these rural transactions, they don't go on market. So you're not going to be able to find the data. So you might be like, oh, there's no houses selling. There's no land selling. And it's like, well, there is. It's just not going to be like when you're scrubbing, on Zillow or Redfin or something like that. It's not going to pop up because it's, one farmer selling to another, something like that. So that's probably the most accurate way to pull comps. It will take a lot of work. Like if you want to like create like a heat map and different stuff like that. But, if there's any land data providers out there that like actually want to create a real comping tool, and if you're able to go scrub the assessor's website, like that right there is what, would be the most valuable for us, because it's only so useful looking at on market stuff.
That's a great point. And it's very applicable to the property or the deals I'm doing east of Colorado Springs. There are very few on market comps. That company you're involved with sold 40 of them in one weekend or something like that. You have to dig to find that data. And so sometimes anecdotal evidence is more important than anything you can find on Zillow. But let's see, a few more questions I think we have time for. I think I have a different answer to this question. We've talked about this before. So I'm going to pose it again and I'll see what you say and then I'll say what I'm thinking. But if you had to start over again tomorrow with 10,000, what would you do first?
Ooh, if I had to start over tomorrow with $10,000.
My answer is not super fun. If you're the person, in my opinion, you need to be the person that is willing to cold call aggressively for a long period of time. Otherwise, I would say you need to save up more money to get started. It's not enough money. It's just not. It's not to say that no one can do it or will ever do it, but I think the majority of people doing this will end up just blowing the little bit of savings they have and being right back in the position they were in. This is a pretty capital intensive venture. So if you're that aggressive person that's willing to just get on the phone and cold call, I'd say find the hottest area for builders. I'd have to look around in whatever part of the country you're considering where you have a really high confidence of being able to sell whatever you get quickly or to sign it or double close it, and just cold call those owners relentlessly. But if you're not willing to do that and you want to start by getting deals with mail and you only have 10 grand, I'd probably say you don't have enough money.
Yeah, no, I agree. And since we're doing non-answers, yeah, it's uh 10,000 is not enough to get started with business ownership. It's just not. Not for this if you're wanting to build something long-term and sustainable. Just like we talked about at the beginning of like, yeah, there are people that do, kind of the quick cycle wholesale model in this, but it's dying. That's why so many people have fallen off. And I think that you need a lot more money to start a legitimate land business than 10 grand. And what I would do is I would either go find an investor group and work commission only. And, if they have the systems and processes in place, that's even better, where you can just jump in and like, yeah, I'm going to do freaking 10,000 dials a week or, whatever it is. Or I would go get licensed and go work for, a land focus group or investor, kind of friendly brokerage and, just pound the phones and get as much experience as you possibly can. I don't think 10 grand is enough. What is enough? I don't know. Maybe 50,000 to get started. 50,000 liquid saved up so you can like dive in, full time, and this isn't on there, but I feel like one of the questions that I do get asked pretty regularly is, can you do this part time and with a full time job? And the answer is maybe. I think it depends on you, and I think it depends on your life circumstances. If you're a single, girl or guy, you've got like a pretty easy 40-hour, 35-hour a week job, like, and you aren't super concerned about your social life and you're willing to work weekends and evenings and stuff like that, I think you can start this part-time. Or if you have a tremendous amount of money and you just want to, fund people's deals and stuff like that, you could for sure do it part-time. But if you're like looking to dive in and create like a life-changing business, like I think you do at the beginning probably need to dedicate like closer to, full-time working hours. I think, Dan, when you and I got started, like it didn't take full-time working hours
No.
to, run a business like this. It was really, really easy. It is no longer really, really easy. It's running a real actual business. Like this isn't like an internet desktop side hustle. Like we're out there, whether it's meeting with investors or meeting with landowners or meeting with land buyers, like we're spending a tremendous amount of time working, on this business.
Yeah. And there's quite a few things I want to say, your point about it not being as easy to go quickly flip and assign infill lots or lots in general, really anywhere. There will be another cycle where it's busy again, and there will be parts of this country that are busy next spring, I'm sure. But that level of a blanket frenzy we had almost everywhere in the country, that is rare. I don't know that we'll see that again anytime soon. You never know. Honestly, I hope we don't, because that means there's the printing press is going again and interest rates are lowered, which means something's going very, very wrong elsewhere. So I just want to reshape people's expectations more so because we've seen so many people come into our school community or just show up on social media and different groups we're in, or even just locally, who are so excited to get in. They waste 5, 10, 20 grand. They make no traction. They're stuck in their job. And so I'd rather set a slightly more long-term and maybe less exciting perspective and then have somebody be the outlier that makes a big paycheck in 60 days or 90 days than the opposite, because I think those are the outliers. And so with everything we're saying, we're speaking in general. So you can find exceptions to what we're saying. Absolutely. But we're speaking in general. So I think it applies to most people. So, yeah.
No, it's tricky, and we're not trying to, scare away, potential competition or anything like that. It's just like this is real. Like it's a very real, legitimate business with legitimate wins and legitimate losses that you have to, be really, willing to take on. Like business ownership, like I would not call it fun. Like it's not
Some
fun.
days. Some days it is.
Yeah, and there's the occasional deal and stuff like that that can kind of be exciting, and like the fun part is like, yeah, the lifestyle freedom of you can, kind of choose your own hours, but it's also like, okay, well, if you don't work, you don't get paid, or if your employees, are slacking off and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
it is a lot, at least at the level that both of us are at. Dan, any of these other ones that we think are good and relevant for the show?
The last one I want to hit on, because I think this is one of the most important things, and not to pat myself on the back, but one thing I have done really well, it's how do you make sure your marketing is consistent as your business gets busier and busier? And I do think, again, this was probably someone that sends land offer letters because that's so much more tedious to prepare and send and kind of creates that challenge more. But I have been unrelenting about sending mail every Friday. I haven't had any gaps or any missed weeks, I think, since like mid 2022. And that has definitely served me and our business. And so I just I don't know how to answer this question other than prioritize, because this is one of the most difficult or important things in the business. Think of it like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. Like, you have to do it. Um, but yeah, I can't overstate how important that's been and how much it helps fill the gaps where we get people from a year ago randomly calling. We got a deal in Pueblo West a few months ago. I don't know where this came from. I hadn't mailed this area in years, but he had one of our postcards and it was a quick little win. And, I know all the builders there, so we sold it before I even bought it. And that wouldn't happen if I wasn't so relentless about sending mail. So just being consistent with your marketing is at the top of the priority list.
Yeah, and if you're, you know, it's one of the most boring parts of the business. So there's different ways you can kind of set up your ecosystem or your business environment to make that easy. There's which like kind of goes into what I was talking about of like, I'm going to sit down and this actually will be me, not my wife, doing this. Like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pull every single landowner that my company wants to, potentially acquire land from. I want to essentially create like 50 years of inventory. And so I'm going to pull all of it. So I'm not as concerned about like the landowner itself, but it's the actual parcel data. And every certain period of time, we're going to refresh it. But if you go and you really understand your market that you're marketing in and pull all of the data that you can and then create a budget around how you're going to market of, okay, I can spend $1,000 a month where there's 15,000 records here. You're going to be able to hit, give or take like 1,800 of those people every single month. And you can set that up on a drip campaign within your CRM and you're good for the year.
Yeah.
And so like it doesn't have to be an every Friday thing. It can just be like, I'm going to spend 1 week, in December or something like that. So for the new year, all of my stuff is, done and set aside. And then whenever you're adding on, then you can just add on to it of like, okay, we want to add this market in. I'm going to go do this and, add them to the drip campaign and stuff like that. So it's like, know your personality of if you're like me and like the thought of like, dude, on a Friday, like Fridays, like it's hard for me to do anything. Uh, like, I feel like weird if I'm not like going out and doing something fun on a Friday. So it's how do you set up this environment to make it so where you can focus on what matters the most? And if marketing is something that you are putting to the wayside, you need to, change your priorities or change your systems to make it so where you're never going to fall off, because it's the worst thing you can do.
Well, I think we hit on a lot of different topics. Anything else within our list here that you want to hit on, Mason?
No, I don't think so. I think this was a fun episode. We appreciate you guys and your engagement to allow us to answer these questions. And yeah, if you ever have any ideas for shows or stuff that you would want to see, Dan and I are most active in our school community. It's Ground Up Land Community. Go check us out on School. That's the easiest place to get a hold of us, chat about the podcast, or chat about different land deals we're doing. So we appreciate y'all's time today. This is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkost with the Big Picture Blueprint, signing off.